Hello, everybody. What's up? What's going on, everybody? This your girl Tiffany coming through right here live in effect and in the greetings. Salam alaikum. Please make sure you guys subscribe to my channel, hit the notification bell, share the channel, and all that great stuff. So Ramadan Mubarak to all of you that's out there fasting today. So today I'm going to deal with the topics about two individuals who were enslaved in Georgia and Sapio Islands, which part is not too far from Atlanta, part like 2 or 3 hours away from Atlanta. It's part more so closer to Savannah area. I'm not exactly sure. But anyways, these individuals, I used to practice Islam, but I I used to practice the custom. Let's just put it like that. I used to practice the custom of Islam. But yeah, I have a lot of knowledge about Islam. Yeah. But anyways, yeah, these individuals they were from West Africa and they were both enslaved in Sapio Island, Georgia. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cover up the information about both of them because the sources that I have both their biographies and their stories and their background, their history and whatnot. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go ahead and get started. All right, so let's look at Bilali Mohammed. If you guys can see my screen, hopefully y'all can see my screen. Okay. So Bilali Muhammad arrived at Sapio Island, Georgia. All right, so right here it says, an unfortunate misconception among today's American Muslim community is that Islam has only been present in America for less than 100 years. Many American Muslims are children of immigrants who came to the United States from the Middle East and South Asia in the mid 19th century and thus wrongly assumed that the first Muslim in America were those immigrants. The reality, however, is that Islam has been in America for far longer than that. Besides, possible pre-Columbian Muslim explorers from Al Andalus and West Africa, Islam arrived in America's shore in ways through the Atlantic slave trade from the 16th through 19th century, while hundreds of thousands of slaves arrived in America during this time. The stories of only a few have been preserved and are known. One of the enduring and unique is that of Bilali Muhammad. All right, so as you can see, that's like a flyer to be sold. Let me see what it says right here. So they had an auction in South Carolina. It says to be sold on Thursday, the third day, a cargo of 94 prime healthy Negroes. All right, just to read a little bit of it. Anyway, it says as European nations began to colonize the New World in the 1500s, a demand for cheap labor arose. Plantation mines and farms needed workers throughout North and South America, and the native population of the New World proved unsuitable due to their lack of immunity to European disease. As a result, European powers such as Britain, France, Portugal, and Spain looked south towards Africa for a source of slave labor they could exploit. Thus, European slave traders began arriving at ports in Africa looking to buy slaves. Generally, Europeans did not go and capture slaves themselves. Instead, they would commonly pay local rulers to go to war with the other African states, capture warriors, and sell them to be taken to America. The African rulers would be paid commonly in weapons, which would further perpetuate the cycle of violence and enslavement. The entire system worked to handicap Africa's social, political, and economic development, and the result of this genocide are still felt in Africa today. Estimate vary, but over 12 million Africans were probably forcefully taken from their homelands to serve as slaves in America, with as many as 20% of them dying on the transatlantic journey known as the Middle Passage. Since much of the slave trade was focused on West Africa, a large number of those slaves were undoubtedly Muslim. The Savannah kingdoms of Mali and Songhai had long been centers of Islamic civilization in West Africa, and a huge Muslim population existed in the region. So let's look at his story right here. So as you can see, again, those who came through the Middle Passage, right, and about a good large percent of them, or like a good 30% of them, was Muslim. So with that being said, more than likely, many of us may have somebody in our family, I'm talking about in our bloodline, in our ancestry, that are Muslim and that practice the Muslim custom, more than likely. All right. And right here, Bilali Mohammed, one of the many Muslim slaves taken to America, was Bilali Mohammed. He was from Fulani tribe. So you're going to learn that, there was a lot of Fulani people that came here to America, those who were of the Fulani descent or Fulani background. And a lot of the Fulanis were Muslim. The Hausa people was Muslim. Then you had those who was Igbo, the Mandikas. Yeah, a lot of them were Muslim. He was from the Fulani tribe and was born around 1770 in the city of Timbo in what is now Guinea. He came from a well-educated family, received a high level of education himself in Africa before being captured as a slave sometime in the late 1700s. He was fluent in the Fula language along with Arabic, and had knowledge of high-level Islamic studies, including Hadith, Sharia, and Tafsir. He was captured in unknown. How his capture was unknown, but he was originally taken to an island plantation in the Caribbean, and by 1802 he arrived at Sapio Island off the coast of Georgia in the southern United States. If you notice, he was sent off to the Caribbean, and then by 1802 he was sent off to what? The States. That happened a lot with many slaves. When they were sent off, that happened a lot to many slaves. When they were sent off to the Caribbean islands, right? Many of them were also traded to be in the States, working in the United States. So again, there's a chance that you may have some descendants that had been enslaved in the Caribbean and brought here into America. All right. At Sapio Island, Bilali was fortunate enough to have Thomas Spalding as a slave owner. While conditions across the South were horrendous for slaves who were forced to work throughout the day and were commonly denied such basic necessities as clothes and stable shelter, Spalding gave certain freedoms to his slaves that were absent elsewhere. He did not push the slaves to work more than 6 hours per day, had no white slave drivers, and even allowed his Muslim slaves to practice their religion openly, a real freedom in the deeply Christian South. Bilali was even allowed to construct a small mosque on the plantation, which very well may have been the first mosque in North America. It says, because of Bilali's relatively high level of education, he rose to the top of the slave community and was relied upon by his owner to take care of much of the administration of the plantation and its few hundred slaves. Perhaps the most remarkable account of Bilali Muhammad's leadership and trustworthiness occurred during the War of 1812 between the United States and the United Kingdom. All right. Spalding reportedly left the plantation with his family. Fearing a British attack and put Bilali in charge of the plantation defense, he even gave Bilali 80 muskets to defend the island with, which was distributed among the plantation Muslim population. Bilali kept true to his word and managed the plantation while his owner was gone and turned back over to Spalding after the war. The fact that a slave owner trusted his slaves so much as to give him as to give them control of the plantation along with weapons speaks volume about the character and trustworthiness of Bilali Muhammad. All right, so it also goes into the document, the Bilali document. As a well-educated Muslim from West Africa, Bilali no doubt brought his Islamic education with him to America. This is evidenced by a 13-page manuscript he wrote and gifted to a Southern writer, Francis Robert Golden, before he died in 1857. The manuscript was written in Arabic and was thus unreadable for most Americans for decades. It made its way to Georgia State Library by 1931, who attempted to decipher the manuscripts, which was popularly believed to have been Bilali's diary. After years of effort that evolved, numerous scholars as far away as Al Azhar University in Egypt, scholars finally managed to decipher the manuscript. It turned out that it wasn't a diary at all, but was actually a copy of passages from a treatise on Islamic law in the Maliki Madhab, written by a Muslim scholar of Fiqh, Ibn Abu Zaid al Karawani in Tanzania in the 900s. The Razala of Ibn Abu Zaid was part of the West African law curriculum prevalent in Bilali's homeland in the 1700s when he was a student. When he came to America as a slave, he was, of course, unable to bring any personal belongings with him, and thus copied the Razala was written entirely from memory decades after he learned it in West Africa. This exemplified the level of knowledge present in West Africa, even as it was ravaged by the Atlantic slave trade. The Bilali document is thus probably the first book of Islamic jurisprudence ever written in the United States. And while Islam slowly died out among the African American community in the United States in the 19th century, it is important to recognize and appreciate the stories of the first American Muslim. They were not a small and consequential group. They numbered hundreds of thousands and despite almost insurmountable difficulties, they struggled to preserve their Islamic heritage under the oppression of slavery. The story of Bilali Muhammad is a perfect example of the efforts of this early American Muslim community, one that could inspire American Muslims of the present, whether they be of African descent or not. All right, so that's some great information, and it's coming from the source called the Century Welfare Association.org, so you guys can check out the website. All right, let me go ahead and show you guys something else. All right, so I have information from the Sapio Islands Arabic document, the Bilali Diary in context. B.G. Martin is coming from the source of the Georgia Historical Quarterly on the fall of 1994. All right, so let me go ahead and show you guys this information. Oh boy. All right. All right. As you can see right here, this article goes into more depth about the Bilali diary. So let's see what they're talking about here. And it says the well-known Bilali diary produced by a slave on Sapio Island has long attracted attention and fueled speculation by scholars in Georgia and elsewhere. Much of the interest in this short Arabic document lies in its seemingly unreadable text, which has raised question about its slave author, the circumstances behind his authorship, and the meaning and purpose of his words. All right, so it says, while much of what we know about the manuscript's author, Bilali, sometimes spelled Bu Ali, Ben Ali, or Bu Allah, remains sketchy and circumstantial, it is considerably more than we know of most slave lives. In his 1984 book, American Muslim in Antebellum America, Alan Austin devoted a chapter to Sapio Island's most famous slave, named after Prophet Muhammad's prayer caller. Bilal bin Rabah Balahi was originally from Timbo and Futa Jalan, a West African region now in the Guinea Republic, about 100 miles northeast of Conakry, its capital. All right, and then let's see what else we can find in this book. This article. All right. So right here it says the Futa Jalan disturbance lasted from about 1725 to the end of the century. The defeated factions were often sold into slavery. All right. These constantly warring groups, whether Muslim or non-Muslim, were perpetually on the lookout for individuals whom they could capture and barter to the slaves for gunpowder and musket. One assumes that Bilali was one of these unfortunates swept up by some local warlord and taken to the coast, where he was shipped across the Atlantic. Although such dealings were contrary to the Muslim laws, these dictates did not trouble various Muslim traders who profited from the enslavement and the sale of their fellow Muslims. All right. All righty then. Let's just skip down. All right, so right here it says, interesting. Oh wow, I found something very interesting. Hold on, it says once Golden son Benjamin donated the diary to Georgia State Library in 1930. Scholarly interest in its contents and meaning grew. Folklorist Lydia Parrish of St. Simon Islands on the author of Slave Songs of the Georgia Sea Islands in 1942 sent a copy of the diary to an anthropologist, Melville Hersovitz. Was it Melville Hersovitz? In hopes that he could translate it. Hersovitz in turn showed it to a fellow Northwestern University scholar linguist, Joseph Greenberg. Greenberg traveled to Nigeria in 1939 with a copy of it in hand, and on the basis of consultation with locals, Malams published a brief essays on the diary in the Journal of Negro History. The publication of Greenberg's piece spurred further interest. In 1942, Ella Mae Thornton, Georgia State librarian, notified Harold W. Gilden, who headed the Near East section of the Library of Congress, of the diary and supplied him with a photostat copy. By the end of the decade, Gilden had undertaken his own translation of the diary, and although he never published it, he indicated that his findings generally supported those of Professor Greenberg's. It says Greenberg's article, which he labeled a preliminary statement, included all essential facts about the document and attempted a partial analysis of it. Although Greenberg could read only a short piece of the text, he soon realized that in several passages it resembled a well-known law book, Ibn Abi Zaid al-Qarawani's Razala or Treasy on Maliki law. Now, more than a half a century after Greenberg published his article, it seemed worthwhile to reconsider the document to see if anything new can be learned from it, and to elaborate a little on the excellent start made by Greenberg towards the solution of this problem. Goes on to say, it seems quite likely that the Bilali diary was written within a standard Arabic kind of pen or kalam on a well-known sort of Italian paper. The document consists of 13 folios or pages, each about 6 1/4 by 3 1/3 inches. Its text is laid out for the most part with 14 lines to the pages. With the passage of time, the unglazed laid paper of the diary has turned a dull brown, and slightly reddish brown ink has faded. So further, the ink has seeped through from one side to the other on almost every page, which makes deciphering difficult. All right, so anyways, let's skip down. It says several points emerges from a consideration of the first page of folio. Greenberg suggested that the document is merely a copy of the Islamic law textbook, and it is true that Al-Qurani's Razla is still one of the most widely read texts of its kind in North and West Africa, a region populated heavily by Muslims of the Maliki school. However, there is some ambiguity attached to Greensburg's reading of a name in the first paragraph. Perhaps the author of the original text either copied or recalled by Bilali. As Greenberg noted, it reads quite clearly as Muhammad bin son of Abdullah bin Yusuf bin Ubadi al-Kiwandahi. This person also calls himself Al-Fig. This garbled name, or some slightly different version of it, might be that of the author of some other school law book, not a confused rendering of the name Al-Qarawani, which Greenberg seems to prefer on the basis of his consonantal substitution idea. It is also worth noting that the second section of the diary, in which ritual washing before prayer is discussed, contains another Arabic word, unlike the same section in Al-Quran Wali's parallel text. All right. So I'm just going to read this last part. It says the calligraphic style of the Bilali's diaries deserves some comment. It is the script of a person who wrote but rarely. It is a crude version of one of the common varieties of Arabic script formerly used in West Africa. As A.D. H. Bavar points out in an analysis of Arabic calligraphy practiced by the West Africans, this style of writing was often used for text in the Hausa and perhaps full Fulade languages, but in Arabic script. Like some of the other styles of Arabic used in that region, is ultimately derived from the Kufic through the Ifriqic style of North Africa. So right here, as you can see, that's supposed to be his diary. or they call it his diary, which is nothing more than the documentation that's based on the school of that based on the Sunni school of Maliki, which is the Fiqh, which is the Islamic jurisprudence. That's all it is. It's just basically the law that's outlining, that gives outline about how to make wudu and how to make salat and all of that stuff. So that's all it is. The Maliki law. That's what they discovered, but they had at that time they called it the diary because they didn't know what it was. All right, so this is his book right here, and this is how it was written. This is the manuscript. As you can see right here, it's very distorted, so it was hard for them to decipher or make out what that meant. All right. All right, so right here, where it says, here's the thing, a ritual washing begins, and much of it can be read. So here's the lines where they talk about what was read and whatnot. All right. And it goes on to say that the Bilahi document shows a number of watermarks and other marks. The rough drawing below left shows part of a circle, or rather two arcs of two concentric circles. Between these arcs are three moons, three crescent. Thus, its pages can be described as an Italian Trulon paper, a well-known and common kind of paper exploited widely from the late 18th century until well into the 19th, from Venice, Terese, Livorno to Egypt and North Africa. All right, it says below right, it's a crudely drawn second watermark, apparently a boutique of flowers emerging from a pot within an oval, with some leaves to the right and left. Unfortunately, the bottom half of this design, which may have included a date or manufacturer's name, is missing from the two folia where it appears. All right. All right, so that's all the information on this about Bilahi Muhammad and his diary or his documents. So if you guys want to read more about it, you can just check out this article. It says Sapio Islands, Arabic document, the Bilahi diary. In context, Arthur B.G. Martin, and it was written in 1994. The source came from the Georgia Historical Quarterly. All right. And then, of course, here's the website, and I highlighted it for you guys if you guys want to look more into it. All right, so let's go on to the story about let's go on to the story about Salih Bilali. All right, right here you can find on slaveryremembrance.org Salih Bilali Mazina. All right, so the story goes like this. Salih Bilali was an enslaved African Muslim man who was born in Mazina in modern Mali in the 1770s and lived much of his life in coastal Georgia in the United States. Salih Bilali was an ethnic Fula, like many other enslaved Muslims in the Americas. After being captured into slavery, he was around 12 years old, but Salih Bilali lived and labored in the Bahamas. From there, he was purchased by a Cooper family of St. Simon Island, Georgia. There, he eventually rose to an important position in the plantation hierarchy. Salih Bilali was remembered as a faithful and dedicated Muslim. His owner's son remembered him as the most religious man that he ever known and claimed that his final words were Allah is God and Muhammad is his prophet. The Cooper family spoke highly of Salih Bilali, while Salih Bilali did not write an autobiography. His owner wrote much about his life and experiences. Because of his intelligence and judgment, the Coopers made him their head driver in 1816, a position which put him in charge of more than 400 enslaved workers. Salih Bilali often managed the plantation on his own for long periods of time, and the owner's absent. And it says, as a young man, Salih Bilali learned to read but not write Arabic as part of his Islamic schooling in Mazina. In Georgia, he continued to adhere to his faith. Despite the challenges on the plantation, he kept and read a copy of the Quran, prayed daily, refused alcohol, and observed Ramadan and its fasts. Salih Bilali was fortunate to be able to maintain his faith and his demanding practices without interference from his owner. He was also fortunate to live in an area in coastal Georgia that had a significant number of other enslaved Muslims with whom he could pray and interact. All right, so that's a story about Salih Bilali. Let's see. Let's see what other information that can be found. All right. So right here, I am on this source called The Legacy of Enslaved African Muslims in America. So it has a list of all the enslaved Muslims, but particularly right here, it focused on Salih Bilali. All right. So according to this, it said he was born at Cana on Niger River. He was captured at 14, sold into slavery ship, arrived at the Bahama Islands. In 1816, became the head driver of 300 to 500 slaves on St. Simon Island. All right. So reliable owner left him in charge of property unsupervised for months at a time. War of 1812 persuaded a half of slaves not to flee to waiting British ships. It says he read Arabic on the Quran during Ramadan, abstained from alcohol and meat. Owner praised his sound judgment, a singularity, tenacious memory, and forethought. He possesses great veracity and honesty. On his deathbed, Allah is God and Muhammad is his prophet. So basically, he was declaring his last shahada. All right. So that's the information. All right. So basically, Simon Island, St. Simon Island, and Sapio Island is not too far from each other. It's like right there in that peninsula. It's right over there by Savannah, Georgia, basically. So over there, it's amazing to find out that there was a lot of historical events regarding to the Muslims being in that area, right? Because I just thought that it was just more of the Gullah Geechee people, because of course the Gullah Geechee runs from the peninsula of South Carolina all the way down to Florida. So I thought it was a lot of Gullah Geechee people there. But come to find out that it was a lot of enslaved Muslims that was in that area too. So they were both in, one was in Sapio Islands, which was Bilali Muhammad, and Salih Bilali was enslaved in St. Simon Island, and they both earned a trust from their slave master to, look out for the plantation while they were away. So, and they both were able to practice Islam freely. They were able to read their Qurans and etc. So they had some type of leadership taking place. And with Salih Bilali, especially, he had a lot of leadership when it came down to 300 and 500 slaves on a plantation. So he was able to do it months at a time while the slave masters were gone. All right. And if you notice, both of them came from they were both dropped off in the Caribbean. So Salih Bilali was dropped off in the Bahamas first. And then he was bought by the Coopers in St. Simon Island, Georgia. And then Bilali Muhammad started off in it'll come to me. But anyways, he would start off in the Caribbean area. I'm not sure exactly what part, I forgot just that fast. But anyways, he went from the Caribbeans and was brought to Sapio Islands, Georgia. So yeah, you're gonna be able, when you study more in depth into history, you're gonna know that, again, many of the slaves were sent off into the Caribbean regions, places like Jamaica, places like the Bahamas, Trinidad, or Barbados, whatever. And then there was those who was bought from the slave masters in the States, particularly in the South, because it was easier, it was not that far away. So they were bought from the islands to the United States and to work here in the South. So that explains why many of us may have some ancestry that might be of the Caribbean background because of that. So yeah, there is a lot of connection. There's a lot of connection that's regarding to that. So it really works hand in hand. But again, you got to be the one to do the research, do your own studies. But anyways, so you guys, thank you for watching and tuning in. That's all the information I have available. So if you guys want to share any more information or add on to it, you can, reach out to me on FrenchTiffany37@gmail.com, or you can reach out to me on my Facebook page, which is Tiffany L. French. All right, so you can do that. And make sure you guys subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell. If you like what you're listening to or like what you're seeing, you can go ahead and give it a thumbs up, or you can give it a thumbs down if you dislike it. That's fine with me. Make sure you check out the other contents. All right, so with that being said, I'm going to log off of here. And I thank you all for tuning in. So have a good one. Please be safe. And Ramadan Mubarak to all you Muslims out there. And I hope you all have a safe one. And for those of you that take the vaccine, please be careful with the vaccines. Please be careful. Just be mindful of that. I think that we all need to start doing the research about these vaccines before we start taking them. You know what I'm saying? But if you took the vaccine, that's great. But please still be careful with this COVID out here, because COVID ain't went nowhere. So COVID is still going to be around. It's going to be around for a while. All right. Also, peace and power and elevation. And in the words of the Muslims, Assalamu alaikum, rahmatullah barakatuh. And I hope you all have a wonderful day. All right. So until next time, peace.